This is insane. The Pittsburgh Penguins suffered another heartbreaking loss last night to the defending champs, despite a ridiculous effort by the Rusty Razor, who put on a show against the Florida Panthers down here in the Sunshine State. Rust did everything he could. Crosby did everything he could. But ultimately, the Penguins fell in a shootout, something that has plagued them all season long. 1-0-6 in the shootout this season. That is not a good stat for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they've been on a run right now, but the games they are losing are games where they falter. It's games where they have a lead and they blow it. So we're going to dive into what happened last night because I actually happened to be at that game in person to witness almost history, but we'll have to wait one more game for that with Sidney Crosby, and I'll tell you what I mean by that in just a little bit. But first, subscribe to the channel, Penguins Digest. About 68% of you are still not subscribed to Penguins Digest. So if you want the latest Pittsburgh Penguins news, rumors, updates, and analysis, hit that sub button, and we got you covered here on Penguins Digest. Let's dive right in because Penguins fans had enough. And for once, I'm ready to say, including me, and not with this team. I'm never going to give up on this team. Never. But some comments that were made by head coach Mike Sullivan after the game last night tell a completely different story than the game that I witnessed when I was there. So we got to look at what Sully said first, analyze it, and figure out what he meant by this, because this is what Mike Sullivan had to say after the game. I thought we competed hard all night. We played against a real good team. It's unfortunate we did not get the 2 points. Now, my take on this and my analysis of what this means from Mike Sullivan is, hey, we played well enough to win last night. And I think maybe we should have got those 2 points. It's unfortunate that we didn't because we played a very good hockey team, the defending Stanley Cup champions, I might add. And yeah, great effort, but we got nothing to show for it. That's pretty much what Mike Sullivan said. Now, what I saw, the Penguins came out strong. They had a little bit of the adjustment period for the first couple minutes, and then when they got their feet under them, they dominated the game. That first period was a clinic. They looked like the far superior hockey team. If somebody told me, and I didn't know anything about hockey going into that arena, one of these teams won the Stanley Cup last year, and I watched that first period, I would have thought it was the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, honestly, guys, we didn't play bad in that game. The first period was really nice, but as the game went on, the Penguins, as they have been, got worse and worse and worse as the game progressed. And Mike Sullivan, for him to say, hey, we did well, we played well enough to win, we didn't get the W, that is not the case, Mike Sullivan, and we lost another game because we couldn't finish. You have to be able to finish games, especially against really good teams when you have an opportunity to get the 2 points. And let's say we were pushing for a playoff spot right now. This has been a theme with this team. We're not able to close out games. We don't have a closer. We are losing these games because we take our foot off the gas and let the other team crawl right back in, one goal at a time before it's too late. And we get into overtime. Nobody scores in overtime. We get into a shootout. Good luck winning a shootout if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. One win. One win in the shootout this season. Guys, every time I watch them in the shootout, it's the same thing. We can't even score a goal. It's not even competitive. And we have talented players, so it's unbelievable how we cannot win in a shootout. But what I really want to talk about today is not how bad that was for me, my experience watching the game, and how a Penguins fan was literally converted to a Panthers fan before my very eyes. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff that happened last night, guys. I want to really dive into it and unravel it, but I don't have time to do that because so much was said that I don't need to say that players have said. And I want you guys to hear from the players directly, not from me, not from a fan, but from the players directly. And the first one I want to hear from is the Rusty Razor himself, because the Rusty Razor was razor sharp last night for the Pens. Bryan Rust did everything he could, everything in his power to give the team a W, and it just wasn't enough from Bryan Rust. He scored 2 absolute beauties in that game, but he couldn't save the Penguins in their shootout loss, and that is quite literally what the headline said, that Bryan Rust scored 2 beauties and got close to a hat trick as well, but it wasn't enough for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We were up 3-1 in that game. We looked fantastic, and then, as I said, continuing to trend downward as the game continued to the point where we lost. You can't just give 20 minutes of good hockey, you have to give me a full 60. And this team has not shown the ability to do that. And it's very frustrating to watch sometimes. But here's what Bryan Rust said himself, because Bryan Rust actually had a lot of good things to say after this game. And I want to dive into every single one of the things that he said after the game. And this is the first quote after the loss to Florida. That's obviously a good team that pushed really hard. We had a few breakdowns there and would have liked to come out a little tighter. For the most part, we played really hard. There are going to be mistakes. That's just the nature of the game. It's a lesson in how good teams win those games. When you're up by a goal, teams find a way to win those games. Russ continued to say about the team, I think it shows a lot of character, a lot about the character and leadership in this room, is that we're here to keep fighting hard, keep playing really hard. It doesn't really matter where we are, kind of what's going on. I think we're still here to prove something and still be a good hockey team. He still believes that this team is very capable, and Mike Sullivan had a lot of good things to say about Bryan Rust as well, and I agree with a lot of them. I think he's a very good leader, and Mike Sullivan actually called him an inspiring player. He plays an honest game. He gives you an honest effort every night. He plays on both sides of the puck. He's got a great attitude. He's a great teammate. He's a born and bred Pittsburgh Penguin, and he's a multiple Stanley Cup champion. And that's what he has to show for it. Bryan Rust, a heart and soul player, a spark plug for this team. When Bryan Rust is going forward, the rest of the team is marching forward right behind him. And Bryan Rust this season, can you say enough about this guy? 54 points in 61 games, playing alongside Sidney Crosby. And the production has always been there for Bryan Rust ever since he became Sidney Crosby's line mate. One of the most productive line mates Sid has ever had. And Bryan Rust's game is one of the reasons why Sidney Crosby has been so effective this year. We're talking about this record-breaking season that Sid is having for the Pens, and a lot of that has to do with Rakell and Bryan Rust, and the credit has to be given to those guys as well, because they have been the best line mates that Sid could ask for. Probably his best line mates since Pascal Dupuis and Chris Kunitz, if you expected me to name drop those two guys today. Mike Sullivan on Bryan Rust's game and on Sid's line overall, among a lot of other great things he had to say about Sid's line. I think Rusty adds a speed dimension to those guys that helps them, especially with the puck pursuit game. If they don't have it, playing the possession game, the three of them are pretty good at hunting pucks and hunting people, and Rusty excels at that. He tracks defensemen as good as any guy we have. He's got a good stick. He forces a lot of turnovers, and then they create off that. And that's the game that Sid likes to play. We talk about a 200-foot game that Sidney Crosby plays. A 200-foot game that has become foreign in today's NHL for a lot of players. But Sidney Crosby, he likes that defensive approach, forcing your own turnovers and then making the magic happen from there. You have to get the puck from the other team first. You can't just cruise around, coast around, wait for it to come to you. You have to make those plays yourself. Get the hunt guys down, hunt pucks down, and that's what Mike Sullivan referred to in that quote, talking about Bryan Rust being one of the best at that on the roster, and him and Sid together, a force to be reckoned with. We talked about Rakell in another video where he's been able to force a ton of turnovers this season, one of the best in the league at that. So those three guys together are a match made in heaven, and that's what we've seen here for the Pittsburgh Penguins first line. They have been firing on all cylinders for a majority of this season, and even lately when the Penguins have been hot, it's because this line continues to be the engine that makes this team run. And Sid, now after that game last night, another multi-point effort, needs only 2 points to pass Wayne Gretzky. And that is something that I would love to see in person against the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow night. After Sid got 2 points against the Cats, he only needs 2 against the Bolts to break Gretzky's record for point-per-game seasons, and that was his 20th multi-point game of the season yesterday, which means he is now second all-time in that category behind Wayne Gretzky for seasons with 20 games of multiple points. So that is something to really admire as well about Sidney Crosby. It seems like every day we're getting a new stat that I've never even heard of that Sidney Crosby is just tracking down and trying to break, and it's usually Wayne Gretzky's records because the guy has 800 of them, but Sidney Crosby, with the help of his two line mates, inching closer, knocking on the door of NHL history, a record that nobody ever thought would be broken. Well, here's Sid the Kid knocking on Wayne Gretzky's door saying, you know what? I might just break that record of yours, Wayne. One of the greatest records that you could break, too. The model of consistency that is Sidney Crosby. He is on a pace for a point per game yet again this season. It's something that we have grown accustomed to seeing from Sid over the years. And even at 37 years old, he has 78 points in 70 games. And that means he is just 2 points away from breaking one of the hardest records to break. Talking about consistency, 20 point per game seasons. From 18 years old to 38 years old, this dude has been cooking a point per game every single season, something that I honestly should never be done. It's not even that he's doing it, it's that it should have never happened in the first place. Even Alex Ovechkin, I was looking down the list of other players that have this many points in their career, as Sidney Crosby, even active players. Alex Ovechkin only had 6 seasons where he averaged a point per game. That's it, 6. And all the rest, he had less than a point per game. Now, I know Ovechkin's primarily a goal scorer. Crosby's primarily a playmaker, setting other players up. Easier to get assists than goals. Some people might argue with that. I think it's equally as difficult, and that's why they both count as points. But Sidney Crosby getting it done. And again, if you want to compare it to something, compare it to Ovi, who's chasing Gretzky's goal record. He only has 6 point per game seasons. Sidney Crosby, plenty. If he can do 2 more points in the next 10 games this season, barring anything crazy, Sidney Crosby is on pace to do it, break Gretzky's record. I hope we see it against the Lightning tomorrow night. Please. Please, Sid, break the record with me in attendance. That'd be great. But thank you guys for watching this episode of Penguins Digest. We have another video coming out tomorrow on the prospects, on the baby Penguins, because some crazy things have been happening for the Wilkes-Barre Scram baby Penguins lately. And that team is a team that's going to be fun to follow come playoff time. Some playoff hockey in Pittsburgh after all, even if it's not our Pittsburgh Penguins. But again, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Penguins Digest.